Hi, this is Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis on February 20th, 2021. About a week ago, I posted a video that I had just moved all my orchids inside. I'll post a link for that right here, but basically the title of that discussion was called Weather, Orchids and Weather Extremes, I think is what it was. And it was about the importance of being up to date on weather forecasts if you're growing your plants outside. And so, as many of you know from the news here in Texas, we basically shut down for a week. We had 3 crippling winter storms back to back to back, and you know, any one of those storms would have completely disrupted life here in Texas since we're not used to it. But the fact that we had 3 back to back to back, and then we had 2 smaller ones in between, all in about a week. You know, Monday of this week, we recorded here in Austin the lowest daytime temperature ever in history. And of course, my little heater in this greenhouse, my heater right back there is a little southern burner, and it can't keep up. So I brought all my plants inside knowing what was going to come, kind of, but I didn't fully anticipate the level of devastation that happened here in Texas. You know, I know folks that have been without a shower for a week. They have had no power for a week. This is tens of degrees below freezing in a state that doesn't ever experience that for an extended period. Our power grid went down. You know, the least problematic thing that could have happened is that people lost their plant collections. The worst thing, of course, is that people died as they froze. You know, a lot of them didn't have fresh water. They didn't have food. Here at my house, we had 3 power outages ranging from 12 to 18 hours long. I had 2 fireplaces burning. You know, I've got renters on one side of my house and I'm on the other side. And luckily I had enough cut wood to have 2 fireplaces going for a full week. And that really helped get us through. Almost all of my plants are doing just fine. In fact, today, on Saturday, I'm moving everything back in. So I just want to give a quick status update. You know, I got so many messages from so many people asking how everything was and how my plants are and how I was, my family, and I'm happy to report that luckily we have no burst pipes in my house. Some of my neighbors do. Like I said, we have trees taking down power lines. That was the cause of the 3 outages at my house, was trees taking down power lines. And actually what happened was we had an ice storm, and then we got 6 inches of snow, and then we had an ice storm on top of that, and then some more snow, and trees were just falling. You know, I was walking outside with my family and it sounded like gunshots going off. You know, I'm here in Texas, so you know, gunshots going off is not a big deal for us normally, but these were just trees falling. These trees falling, huge limbs snapping off. I'll post some pictures here, and it's crazy. So it was taking down power lines left and right. So today it's about 55 degrees outside. Here in the greenhouse, it's super warm. You know, I'm in a t-shirt, and I'm moving my collection back outside. Or back into the greenhouse, because I don't think we're going to have any more weather like that for the rest of this season. In fact, I'll start moving my plants out of the greenhouse, you know, in early April, so about a month away. But in any case, before I get all of my plants out here, I kind of want to show you my casualties, which were very, very few. I'm so happy to report that there are very, very few casualties. And my cat is meowing. He was bored. He was walking around the house yowling like a crazy man, but he doesn't go outside during the cold weather. He refuses to. But let's turn the camera around and show you the plants that actually started blooming during this freeze. So these are my smallest, youngest plants, and I think I only lost 1. And what I have is a bunch of Cattleya triumphans, which is triumphans is Cattleya rex by Doyana, 4N by 4, and this is a flask that I got from, maybe it was a compound. I think it was a community pot that I got from H&R at the end of 2020, and You know, these little guys here are them. As you can see, you know, they were dry and not doing too well before. They got shoved into a dark corner for a week with no water, and I lost one of them. But I think they'll snap back. They don't look great. But that's pretty much it. That's the only orchid death that I can report. My other young seedlings that I've unpotted from flasks or compots are doing really nicely. And then as you can see, my bench is mostly empty. I still need to move the majority of the plants back out, but I figured I'd show y'all what I have in bloom or in spike. So let's move the watering can out of the way here and start with my Ansellia. This is the smaller Ansellia africana, and it's got 2 spikes right here. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this guy because behind him is another one with a giant spike extending almost all the way to the roof. And as you can see, we've actually got some of the flowers starting to open up. So hopefully next weekend I can do, maybe 2 weekends when more flowers are open, I can do a full-on video on this one. This is such a cool plant. And there's another spike in the back there. I have this Phalaenopsis that I had made a video about a couple weeks ago. It's a NOID at this point. It's labeled as Mycolitzii, but it's not. It's probably Palens. It's either Palens, just Palens, or Palens by Mycolitzii. So unfortunately, I can't pin that one down, but it is really cool. It's finally got all of its blooms open, and you know, I anticipate these blooms will be open for at least a month, and then you know, these types of orchids will just continue blooming on these spikes over and over and over. I have a Cattleya nobilior that is pretty far along in its with its buds here. It's got 2 spikes, another spike back there. So this is a cerulean. I haven't seen this one bloom yet. Looks like I have some scale. I'll just scrape those off before you guys point that out to me in the video. And so hopefully I'll be able to post a video about that guy in a couple of weeks as well. Of interest is this Cattleya lodogii that opened up for me during our troubles. This is what it looks like now, and here's a photo of what it looked like last year. So last year, of course, it was much darker, much nicer, larger flowers, but hey, you know, this guy opened up in a dark corner basically, with very, very cold temperatures. Even in the house, it got down to the middle 40-degree temperatures. This is Barcaria. This one opened up just before it was brought inside. It's kind of a cool little thing. This is a brand new division that I got over the summer, so it's not a great bloom. I bet I'll post a video about it next year when the plant is recovered from being chopped and divided, but super cool. Oh, I should say it is Barcaria whartoniana from one of my favorite orchid places here in town. They're just about 15 minutes from my house. And I have a huge portion of my collection from them. Another plant that decided to open up during the weirdness was this Cattleya maxima. Again, you can see that this particular maxima, it's the colors aren't great, the shape isn't great. It opened up in a dark place rather than a nice bright greenhouse. And here's a photo from last year showing that this is technically a con color for this species. Well, there's some debate. It wouldn't be a con color for other Cattleyas, but Maxima is a little different. Anyway, there's another sheath opening up. Maximas are frustrating in their growth habit because they kind of grow up. I don't know if you can see past my scratched up hand there, but this thing is actually growing up rather than along the top of the pot. Let's see if I can tilt that over and you can see a little better. It's a really irritating growth habit, but it is what it is. Here's one of my other casualties. This is a spike with two buds that are being aborted right there. This is Cattleya amethystoglossa. This is the polyploid that I made a video about last year and compared it. This is from H&R. I compared it to a diploid, which you can see there in the back, for flower size and plant size. There are blooms still in here that are going to come out, so maybe those will be a little more normal. But you can see how thick this spike is. There can be a lot of flowers on the end of these guys. So even if I only get 4, which is what we're on track for right now, that's okay. I love this plant. This is such a great species and such a great plant. This guy back here is in a much better place. Oh, I forgot to say I divided this large one about a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, so it might be sulking a little bit. But this one, this is amethystoglossa as well, that I got from Sergio Garcia over there at Olam Poly Orchids. I got this some years ago. This is one of my favorites. This is a pale colored variety, and you can see it's got 1, 2, you can see 3 spikes. I thought there was 4, but maybe I miscounted. Anyway, this is what an amethystoglossa spike should look like, which is a lot of flowers. And here's a photo of it from last year. This is the diploid, so this is a much smaller plant, even though it is mature. The flowers are smaller, but the color on this one is just amazing. I absolutely love it. Let's go over here to my nobiliores. Oh, I guess this is technically a casualty. My son was carrying this out. This was a bloom spike on this Cattleya walkeriana, Estrella dacalina. I got about a year ago. This is the rubra, and the spike's snapped off. The spike was just starting to poke out, so maybe I'll get another one. This is a sibling of this same plant over here, but it's an alba. And you can see that I'm getting at least 1 bud off of this one. So hopefully that will continue. And here's a photo of the siblings next to each other last year, the rubra and the alba that came from the same pod. Very cool. This is the Cattleya nobilior, the tipo that I posted about a couple weeks ago. Still got its blooms out. This is that nobilior cerulean that I posted about a couple weeks ago. Its blooms are still cranking. I pulled pollen off it about 2 weeks ago, I guess. And it's the flowers are still open. The seed pod's still maturing about a year later. And it has decided to put out another spike. So I'm happy to see that coming along. I got this Cycnoches cooperi. You can see, let me get it up into the light here. You can see that it had 2 spikes that were coming out, and then we got an early cold snap this year that I wasn't prepared for, and the cold temperatures killed those spikes. It put out this sad little secondary spike here, and we'll see if this one little flower opens up. But 1 flower is better than none, so who knows? Maybe this cold snap will not cancel out those flowers. Cloacia Grace done. Got a couple spikes on this one. I'm sorry, this is not Grace done. This is Cloacidum Dragon's Treasure Cardrona. This is Grace done. This is a nice bloom here. It's had better ones, but I think I chopped it up this year. Here's another spike. You can see that I had to cut the pot out. One of these spikes was squished down in between, so I had to cut it out. That happens if you don't pot correctly with your cloaceas, since they do have pendant spikes. Another cool one, this is a Cymbidium here. This is one that was growing in California. Its owner passed away some years ago. I think it's a cool grower. It has no ID, but this is, you can see, you can see 4 spikes in this shot. And there's another one back there and another one over there. 6, maybe 7 spikes. So the idea that you cannot grow and bloom cool growing Cymbidiums in Texas is not necessarily true. Big plant too. To all my fellow Texans and Louisianans and folks up in Oklahoma and other places that experience this bizarre freeze, I hope all of you are doing well, and that I know you will pull through this. You know, when your power turns back on, hopefully you'll still have some plants to enjoy and help sort of distract you from the mess and the cleanup that you have to go through, you know, in the coming weeks and months. To those of you who have lost your collections, you know, hopefully this rebuilding phase will not discourage you, and that you can rebuild and have a wonderful collection again. Anyway, let me know if I can help in any way, and I will talk to you later. Bye.